Good morning, everyone. I'm Pastor Dustin Abbott from Emmanuel Lighthouse United Pentecostal Church here in Petawawa, Ontario, Canada. Recording early, the sun has not yet risen, but I had something that I wanted to share with you for our devotion here today. I recently was listening to a political commentator, and he was talking about an acquisition. He's into collecting antiques and particularly memorabilia from historical moments. And so he had recently purchased a Nazi radio that had been developed during the time when the Nazis were in power in Germany. And the interesting thing about this particular radio is that it's manufactured to only receive approved stations. So this was the radio that everyone was to replace whatever radio they previously had in their houses with, and so they could only receive and only hear what the Nazi Party wanted them to hear. So the set itself was designed to where it would only pick up the frequencies that were approved by the Nazi Party and would be unable to pick up any kind of particularly outside sources, any news from any other place around the world. And the object of this is pretty clear, and that is that they wanted to control the flow of information. They wanted to make sure that the people that were within Germany at that point, they only heard the information that reinforced the reality, quote unquote, that the Nazis wanted to create. So they didn't want them to hear of anything that might question the truth or the veracity of what they were doing, make anyone question the cause, but they wanted people to stay committed. They wanted people to think that they were winning, even in the moments when they were losing. Above all else, they wanted to maintain that control over people's minds, understanding that information is often empowering. It can either it will allow people to draw conclusions for themselves and not allow the party to just speak into their minds. And as I thought about that, I thought, wow, what a great illustration, and unfortunately, what a great depiction of what we're starting to see in our culture right now, where increasingly we're seeing a desire to control the flow of information. And so, maybe you've seen recently, or if you haven't, I'm sure you will in the future, see that, certain pieces of content, even on social media, on platforms that are supposed to just be, much like a telephone, where people pick up a phone and they make a call, but the phone company's not responsible for what's on there. They're not controlling what's said on the phone lines. They're just there to provide a utility. And that was the understanding of which a lot of social media platforms were created. And but increasingly what we're seeing is there is a shift with that, where they're starting to try to control the information that is there and make sure that there's no dissenting opinion out there. And so there'll be a lot of references to authorized or trusted sources, and in some cases there will be a fact check on something that their trusted source does not agree with. And increasingly what we're seeing is that content is just being removed altogether. It's illegal. It's you're not allowed to post any kind of dissenting opinion on there. And increasingly we see this thing starting to take place, and a recognition that those that are in control, they understand that their control is challenged when people are allowed to think for themselves, when people are allowed to hear other opinions. And so we see a move towards, for the same kind of motivations, and that is to have control of the minds and the hearts of the people, to make sure that people only hear things that reinforces what those that are in power want them to hear. I'm thankful that we serve a God who has ultimate power, and yet He is elected to create us in His own image, in His own likeness. And one of those things that God did is that He allowed us to hear a dissenting opinion. Even though in this case, we talk about an authoritative source. God is the ultimate authoritative source. But at the same time, we serve a God who, when He created the garden, He placed in that garden a tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And that tree, of course, a lot of people say, well, why would God even put that there? This tree that could cause destruction and harm, and was the trigger for sin entering into the world. But here's the answer right here we're talking about, and that is that God gave us the power to choose. He did not force us into a relationship with Him. He didn't limit the access of any other opinion, because God respected us. He created us in His image. He gave us the power to choose. Now, ultimately, we know that many human beings, Adam and Eve being the first, chose wrongly. And since then, many, many others have chosen wrongly as well. And even in our own lives, I'll speak for myself. I've certainly made wrong choices along the way. I've listened to the wrong voices. I've followed the wrong path. And Romans 3:23 tells us that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But I have also made choices in my life where I have chosen to follow God. I made a choice to give my life to God. And even though I was raised in a preacher's home, I can recognize certain key junctures in my life where I had to make a decision for myself. And I made some difficult decisions, some decisions that cost me something. But I made a choice to listen to the voice of God and made a choice to choose to follow Him. And that is the beauty of the power of choice that you have, because God doesn't give you a Nazi radio where you can only hear what He wants you to hear, and He tries to force your thought process into only thinking in a certain way. But rather, God wants a genuine relationship with you, a relationship that is not based on ignorance, but rather is based on knowledge and love. And I have found it to be true that as you taste and see that the Lord is good, the more you know of Him, the more that your desire should be for Him. You should desire to please Him the more, the desire to serve Him the more. And a relationship is so much more fulfilling when it is predicated not only on knowledge, but predicated on choice, where I've made up my mind. I have decided to follow Jesus. And the power of that choice is what makes a relationship with God so joyful, but also is going to make an eternity with Him so joyful. There isn't anyone that's going to be forced into an eternity with God. Bottom line, no one. But rather, those who are there, those who walk the streets of the New Jerusalem, will be those who have made a choice. They've made up their mind to filter out for themselves, in their own mind, to filter out the dissenting opinions, the lies from the enemy. They're not listening at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil to the serpent that is whispering half-truths and deceptions to manipulate their minds. But instead, they have chosen to reject that and made a decision for themselves. I will listen to the true shepherd. Jesus said this. He says that my sheep know my voice. And I think that if you're in a place where you're still uncertain as to the voice of the shepherd, you need to develop the discipline through obedience of listening for, asking for that voice. The way to hear the voice of the true shepherd is to ask to hear it. And when you're faced with decisions along the way, to go to Him and say, Lord, I don't know the best path here. I need your wisdom. I need your direction. And in that sincerity of heart, seeking after Him, you will start to hear the voice of the shepherd. And then, of course, you have to make a second choice, and that choice is to be obedient to it. But when we come to the finish line, we will have gotten there, because along the way, as the writer of Hebrews says, that we have laid aside every weight and the sin that so easily besets us, and we have run with patience the race that is set before us. We've tuned out those channels that are speaking the lies and the deception, and we have chosen for ourselves, not because it was forced on it, but chosen for ourselves to tune into and to listen to the voice of the true shepherd. I want to challenge you to do just that today, to make sure this morning that after you finish listening to this devotion or watching this devotion, that you spend some time reaching out to Jesus saying, Lord, I want to hear your voice today. I want to tune out the lies and the background noise and the fear, and I want to hear your voice. If you ask for it, you will hear it. God bless you. Have a wonderful, blessed day today.